Saludo, mi gente. Welcome to Dismantling the Fuckery, the podcast where we deconstruct the illusion and unleash the fabulosity. I'm your host, Kohenet Angelique, your fierce neurodivergent Jewyorican poet and an advocate for decolonial liberation. So get ready to dive into the messy, uncomfortable, and transformative work of dismantling the systems of oppression and the limiting beliefs that hold us back. We're here to reclaim our power, embrace our magic, and rise into fabulosity. So grab your café, your té, I don't know, maybe you need a shot, and let's get into some fuckery. Saluda, mi gente. It's your girl, Kohenet Angelique, and we are going to dismantle some fuckery here. So, sometime last week, I posted up the Praying for a Miracle post. And I said, in praying for a miracle, I realized how strange it is to call being loved by the goddess a miracle. It is not an extraordinary happenstance. It is an act of love to be cared for, and it is as natural as gravity. And so what was happening for me is that I was in this moment where, I was having this experience, and I was like, I'm going to be praying for a miracle. I'm praying for, how do they say, when the clock is like at 11:59, a last minute extraordinary happenstance that's a surprise. And when I was doing that, I was just reflecting on afterward, like after I had the initial moment, and I was like, wait, back up a minute. Now, what you have to understand about me is that I am always ALWAYS, always moving in between these like questions and contending with ideas or theories or belief systems and all of the stuff, while simultaneously holding my own experience and what's present for it. And what I mean by that is that I'm always looking, this is why I teach the way I do and speak the way I do, because I'm always in the world of play in that way, in terms of how are we thinking? What is the essence or the point of this? All of those things. And then I'm also aware of my own process. Like I may need to do this right now that is not necessarily entirely fully expressed with the belief that I hold for it. So for example, I come from an extraordinary amount of faith. My mother was a person who taught after its own kind. I mean, shit would happen. She would magnetize the most amazing things, right? And things would happen in equal measure to an extraordinary amount of fuckery. But that's not for this conversation. And so I come from that. I come from this trust and belief that the floor is not going to drop out. The rug's not going to be pulled, right? In that way. Now, one of the things that I have had as an experience in this lifetime is that while I have these extraordinary belief and I'm like anything is possible, I understand that as humans we're moving through processes, and that at certain seasons and times in our lives, our ability to give life to something may be compromised because the particular stage or experience is actually emotionally overwhelming, transforming, traumatic, grief-filled, or transitionary. What I mean by that is, like, if you're going through a huge life transition, you may have a harder time holding the container of hope or faith for something that you're aiming toward in that particular place. You can't give life to it because your system is overwhelmed. If you've experienced any grief, any loss, heartbreak, any of these things, huge initiations into another season of life, transformations, transitions, it is going to be part of the process that your shit is going to be, it's like a gas tank, it's going to be a bit low. And the reason why I'm saying this is because I think that there's a lot of stuff out there where people are talking about like doing and creating and all of those things, and kind of the solution to your struggle type of mind, right? Like if you're struggling, what you need to do is address your belief system. Yes, 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 and yes. I'm not arguing about that. Because belief is to give life to, right? Belief. I always misspell this shit every time, so that could be misspelled. But anyways, it's to give life. Be and live it, right? And so you have to check those things, but also that these times and transitions in your life are actually quite extraordinary in themselves and may make it challenging, especially if they're dense in nature or traumatic, to for you to hold like the possibility that or give life to any other feeling, any other reality, any other experience. And so at some point I want to talk about what's possible in that time, because you may feel, and I'm sure I've felt this, and this is why I'm talking about, I've felt the times where I'm like, I can't even see a future. These past couple of years kicked my ass. I thought the shit I went through as a kid, as a teen, as a younger, like I thought that shit was, and it was traumatic. Listen, abuse in any way, shape, or form, and I experienced all of them. They don't, they're a fuckery in and of itself. But this level at this stage and age in my life and I'm going to go through the rundown. I don't know if you've heard it before, just bear with me, right? I've simultaneously had, like, I went through years ago. I mean, it feels like a really, really long time ago. It's years. It's been years. Don't worry about it. It's not a recent. Went through a very traumatic divorce, was in a really fucked up marriage that was very toxic, painful, and abusive. Went through the divorce that was also fucked up, painful, and just whatever. Then to try to get on my feet, and then my mother getting sick and dying, and then COVID hitting, and then getting sick with COVID, and then going through a lot of stress and financial challenge in ongoing through the process, right? And then on top of that, then my grandmother died, and then COVID's coming out in terms of like, people are returning to work and shit like that. Life starts to kind of take some form. Next thing you know, boom, my family is smacked with the news that my dad has cancer, and then we start on that journey, and then he passed away last year, right? That amount of fucking, and the natural definition of trauma, the scientific definition of trauma is too much too soon for the system, for the human system. And so what happened is that here I was so rough on myself because I felt like, how could I not have faith in better? How can I not create my experience to be great? Like, why am I struggling? Why am I experiencing this level of like suffering in addition to other fuckery that was happening during that time? So hit after hit after hit. It's like me giving you a whole bunch of things to hold in your arms, and then I'm expecting you to be able to receive more when you're not going to be at capacity. You can't hold anything else. There's no space for anything else. And your emotions are not going to be grounded enough because they're going to go and come in waves, because grief goes and comes in waves. If you're in an initiatory time, that shit has its own container. Like whatever it is, it has its own space. So you don't have a regulated sense in order to build or give life to something in that way. So if during that time in your life, whatever the circumstance is, it has an up and down dynamic, you're in actual transition, it's like liminal, you're in between, and somebody tells you some bullshit around, like, you're not like being able to sustain, here's what I want you to do. I want you to say, I actually do not have the capacity right now to receive the words you're saying, so I would like not to have this conversation right now. It is not helpful to me. Instead of sitting there and hearing it and taking it, and then next thing you know, you're feeling really unheard and really self-critical, right? So here's the permission slip that when you're going through a lot of shit that's painful and life is handing you your ass and you're taking hits, a little bit more kindness and a little bit more gentleness with yourself and a little bit more space. The change you're longing for, the thing you desire, is already and is unfolding in your experience. And you are still going to go through and move through your process, right? It is necessary. It is a necessary part. And so if we're talking about the thing that you desire is, financial stability, or the thing that you're desiring is a healthy romantic relationship, all these things that you may be calling in because they are already an experience for you, right? Like it's your thing. It's really allowing yourself to understand that it will show up in your field. All of those things are wonderful. But if you're talking about basic survival things, those things you might need to get support to meet that in a different way. And one of the things I've been thinking a lot about is actually this thinking about what would it look like to create something that can support entrepreneurs, or that can support people whose livelihood relies entirely on like themselves, not necessarily that you have a job, right? Because a job may have FMLA, a job may have provisions for experiences, or some don't. So that's another thing. But right, for the most part, that's a different orientation. But who helps entrepreneurs when our shit goes down? Now, naturally, you should be planning for this. We should all have contingencies for a hard time, but some things you can't see. I would have never been able to see that for fucking 4 years in a row, I was going to get my ass handed to me by death and grief. There was no way to plan for that shit, right? And that it was going to take me out because it was complex death. And what I mean by that in complex grief is that there's a lot of layers to the things that happen with my mother and my father separately, the family dynamics separately, the childhood wounds that shit, just touched with the tip of its finger, that are no longer, it's not like they're gaping wounds, but they're things that could never be resolved in terms of repair in a relationship. And I had to accept them as they are, right? And that it became a closed chapter once they died, right? There's nothing that can be done in that way with that. So when you have all of those things, you're going to have an experience of it being super challenging. And that we should have and build for ourselves a supportive circle that can hold us during that time, that can really step in to provide relief in a way that's doing things and not just, encouragement, right? Encouragement's great. And if that's all you can give, by all means, offer that. But things like food, things like, meals, I mean, food, both like grocery shopping or necessities, and then also like already done meals, things like that, things like, support in the doing, because you have no idea how you're going to be operational or not, your nervous system, your mind, etc. And so here's that caveat thing that I like to do, or the nuance that I like to bring, because I think that it is insufficient anymore to treat it as if it's the people themselves that have a lack of imagination or a lack of belief. No, when you're going through something, you're gonna struggle just a little bit more, or a lot of bit more, to still hold the anchor. And so you're going to have more coming in terms of support and nourishment as a person to sustain you through that. But to create in that state is going to be challenging, because your energetic capacity and your energetic reflection is going to not be as consistent as it would be. And you won't have the capacity to give it life in the same way as if you were not having all of those things going on in that way, right? And now you can create a container of something, or a reality or an experience of something, by just, doing a hyper focus or throwing yourself into it. But that container is one you're building through your own strength and will have to maintain through your own strength, versus building something that energetically is full and infused with the love, the devotion, the belief, all of those things, that it continues to magnetize self-sustaining energy. And you don't have to keep at it in order for it to happen. See, that's the difference between creating with your own mind and your own shit, and creating when you're interconnected to things that are greater than you and into the energy forces that move in this universe, right? That move in the world. And so coming back to this idea of a miracle, the miracle idea has assumptions that, the surprise language is an assumption that it is not the norm. It is not, it should not be expected. It should not be required. None of those things. This is extraordinary. It's a happenstance. And so when you apply the miracle language to a desire or to a thing you're needing, it is insufficient and incongruent with what actually is happening. And so here's an opportunity to begin to think about what you're believing. What assumptions are you working with when you're using particular words, which are always incantations, as a poet, 1,000, 10,000 times, then 10,000% of the time, every fucking word is an alchemy of an energy that turns into the form of a word that then turns into form in our reality. So it's incantational. That's why we call it spelling. You know what I mean? Like a language as shaped by words and cognition of the mind is actually meant to communicate and name the texture of an energy. And so when we're looking at the word miracle and we're looking at the context that it exists in, the assumptions are actually not aligned with what you're actually trying to do or experience. Because the assumption is that it's going to be a surprise and it's not the norm, when it's actually a part of your existence to experience joy, resource, happiness, love, connection, and connection romantically and connection platonically and self-connection. It's all the connections, and not in that structure of like, you can have this piece of cake if you eat your dinner. Not that shit. I don't even know where the fuck we get some of the things we get, but we just like, it's like being a tease. I think it's like a kink. Well, if you behave well, then you might get the thing that you're asking for, right? Rather than the understanding that what I am needing, or I may be perceiving that I'm needing, is actually within my right as a human to experience. And that's the fuckery of this world, right? Where we have people experience hunger, experiencing violence, experiencing all these things that we are actually not, like, we're not actually getting at or addressing, right? We're not saying there's food lacking. It is this person's right to have it. I'm going to go take food. Where like you have to fill out an application to see if you qualify for the benefits of getting food. And when we give you food, what we're gonna fucking give you is a large chunk of cheese. Anybody know that prera? It's the Spanish word for, like, we used to talk about, it's like WIC supplemental food, or a church is offering supplemental foods, and the quality of those foods at times are great and at times are the shittiest thing in the world. And so back in the day, you would get this big block of cheese, literal fucking cheese, for you to slice, and pray to God that you have a slicer that will do it evenly. Otherwise, you're stuck with some fucking like weird ass chunks of cheese, which make it really difficult to put it in a sandwich if you're picky like I am anyways. I'm all about like uniformity and texture and all of that shit. And so, right, like dairy, that's a load of dairy for your system, right? So anyway, so we have systems that are actually about qualifying worthiness for something. Do you qualify for it? And that actually continues to reinforce the state of mind that I am unworthy of it, and that I must assume a posture that makes me worthy. And this is a dynamic, and please know that I'm speaking to this from the place of recognizing that we are conditioned in this way. And that part of our deconditioning is understanding that our worthiness doesn't lie in the correct behavior. It doesn't lie in all that other shit, that it actually is. It has no qualifying component. It has no proof component where you have to prove that you're worthy to be worthy. But that Your humanity is as important as mine and as anybody else's. And from that assumption, from the standpoint that we are all deserving for just being, then I don't have to ask for a miracle. I don't have to ask for I don't have to request something as if it's far from my reach. My work in the process, whatever the thing I'm desiring, requesting, or creating space for it to be given life to, is something that I am going to spend my time resonating, or like whatever the thing is, like meditating, experiencing, creating the experience of the energy that I want to feel in the thing. Right. And so what I mean by that is, if I'm operating rather than from the place of assumptions that are of my unworthiness, so that I'm asking this miracle, and this miracle having to do with my care, my love, all of the things in my life, if I shift that out from that place and from that positionality, then I'm able to say to myself, okay, and I'm going to go with a hypothetical. Let's say, this is going to sound so cheesy, but just bear with me. Let's say I'm like, oh shit, okay, I I need light, and light costs money, right? Light in my house, electric rather, right? And that electricity costs money, and I need electricity. And so I'm trying to figure out, how can I be worthy of receiving the electricity? Like, what's going to make me a good candidate to get it? It's fucking light. I need the light, right? And so my job, instead of being like, do I think I'm worthy of having my light paid so that I can see, or I can, whatever the light is giving you? Or is it really about me inhabiting energetically the experience of having light in my house, flicking on the thing, the flicker mabob, right? Turning, the actual engagement of it already existing. And then what I'm going to do things that are going to help me. And this is about access point. If you visualize, visualize. If visualization doesn't work for you, don't fucking visualize. Stop trying, because it's just bullshit. It's because some of your superpowers actually have other components of sensory connection. So maybe you need to have that experience of stepping into the sun as it lights your face. And when you feel that, you imagine that to be the light source, a light source, an electric light source for your home. And as you're engaging in that experience, then you're doing things that people would do when they have light, right? Like it sounds dumb in that way, where it sounds very foolish or simplistic, or perhaps I can be oversimplifying it in the way I'm communicating it. But really finding the sensory access point to inhabit what is already true, what already has life, and that is needing, what it actually needs is the spaciousness to show up in this, right? To show up in this form, that where you can palpably experience it, right? It already is. It's almost like something, it reminds me of, I don't know if you remember this movie. It's actually a really creepy movie. It's with Kevin Bacon, and he's the Invisible Man, right? So it's the equivalent of this like invisibility thing. And you know how when they're invisible, when he's invisible, any Invisible Man, because it's many movies, when he's invisible, you can't see shit. But you watch in the movies that there's this, people get a sensing, like there's something in the room, or there's someone in the room, and they keep on turning around because they feel the energetic texture of it. That's the same thing. And then what happens is, what do you have to do in order to see the invisible man? Well, he either has to put some fucking clothes on, or you're going to put some sort of substance or shit on him so that you can see, throw a blanket, throw paint, throw something so you can actually see him. What we're doing is actually learning what it looks like to throw paint on something, to put clothes onto something, and that we're actually in the process of that when we are activating, or the desire for something becomes alive in us. When I think about romantic relationships, right? I'm single, And when I think about the idea of the type of partner, man that I would like to be with, person that I would like to be with, I think of it in the space of feeling the texture. I mean, literally, I can feel this person's energy. I can feel I I'm a monogamous person and yeah, heterosexual monogamous, blah blah blah, right? Although very queer in my movement of in my mindset and all of that goodness, but recognizing that the way I move tends to be in a way that has conforms to the structure, not because I wanted to. It's just my particular preference, right? In terms of how I express my sexuality. Having said that, I think about the energetic texture of this person. I spend time sensing into that experience, right? And I know that we have all different beliefs around whether it's a soulmate or whatever the thing is. I particularly would like to have the experience of building a life with someone that takes us to the end of the road, which would be in this dimension, the grave, right? That would be wonderful. Whether it happens or not, whatever the plans are, there they are, but those are my personal desires. And so I am holding in that space. I am holding for that thing. Not how can I adjust my thing for what I may perceive as an external experience of reality, but that I am able to really lean into throwing paint on this thing so that I understand that it is in existence already. So if I want to feel lush, if I want to feel these things, and these are things that it's taken me so much time to come back to a center in, not because I don't know how to fucking do it, nor any of that shit, right? Which is sometimes such an insult to one's spiritual intelligence. But what it actually is when you are going through a lot, it becomes difficult to hold the texture of that, to hold the energetic resonance of it. And then you may experience a transition and a change that actually changes your primary superpowers or primary way of sensing in the world, like a vision board or envisioning versus feeling it entirely. The most optimal thing would be to use all your senses in order to engage in the experience of already like what you desire or what you're wanting or what you're feeling that is emerging and already exists in you, already exists in your reality, and that it's unfolding and becoming. It's becoming tangible in this realm because it already exists. And it is not based on worthiness. It's not how many monkey tricks can you pull, how many hats out of your ass can you pull, or rabbits or whatever, rabbits out of your hat. Yeah, that went a little south, so let's not use that. But you know what I mean? Like, whatever it is, you get to actually fully step into a place of inhabitation. You get to fully step into a place of really giving yourself the compassion and really coming from the place of knowing that it already is for you. And that's what caught me when I said it, right? It's like I was like, I'm praying for this miracle. I'm like, oh, God, is this miracle? It is not a miracle that whatever your cosmology is, but for me, the Shekhinah, the Hashem, that, God would want to care for me, would love me enough to care about my basic needs, right? And I spoke about this in the last podcast. It's like, what in the fuck world are we living in that we would not have an interest in each other's well-being? That we would not have an interest in each other's lives or needs or desires for that matter. What the fuck did we do as humans that we created a world where we can be experiencing need for something or not have access to something, and that we try to qualify, quantify, and create a filter of worthiness for that? That's insane. Basic human needs. That's bananas. And so when we come to this place, we understand that we get to offer, we get to share, we get to move resource, we get to be supportive for each other, we get to be a support when we are overwhelmed with so much challenge, transition, pain, fill in the blank, right? And that it It is no longer a worthiness aspect. Now, understand that I know that there's a difference and believe that there's a difference between having boundaries around things because there's people that would exploit it, because fill in the blank. I get that, but that's not what I'm talking about, and that's not actually what's happening. Right? What's happening is that people that have a need of something the most in this dimension because of whatever their context is or their experiences, etc., are not being resourced, are not being supported, and are going through unimaginable suffering, right? That should not be part of our human equation, given the beauty and given the world we live in. You know, there is enough for everybody. There is enough for every human being to experience a beautiful home, a beautiful plate of food, a warm environment, to be loved and cared for and not abused and exploited and taken advantage of. That we live in a world where this is possible. It is fucking possible. And we are the vehicles of that possibility infused with the life force of cosmic energy or whatever the fuck you want to call it. So this invites us to a return and a realigning and congruence of our language and the assumptions by which we are actually moving forward in. This is being intentional and being present, and also being presently compassionate with yourself when you know you're getting hit left and right and your tank's a little low, baby. You got to go get that thing nourished up. And by all means, I hope that if there's anything, any support I can offer in my work in the world, that you feel comfortable coming and getting that support for yourself. And if it's a matter of financial support in terms of like you don't have access to money to pay for a session or whatever the case may be, please check out the YouTube channel, right? Or join the Substack. That's a much more accessible place. But don't go without, because that's really, really hard. And I love you too fucking much to sit here and be like oblivious or just self-focused. I am a human being and I'm built with the capacity to take care of myself and also support you. This is this bullshit where people are like, I only have enough space for me. Not be, that's not how that thing is. That is selfish, right? Where it's like you are always self-oriented. But when you're both and, when you dance between, I'm making sure that my cup is full and it's overflowing, and that from there I'm offering you, right? And that it's a process, that it's a integration, that it's a dance, then it allows us to move with an integrity that will never leave somebody without food, never leave somebody without their rent paid, never leave somebody without a roof over their head. Because we have the capacity for both, and you are not going to go without because I think that somehow you're a threat to what I'm creating or to my life because I need more than you do in this moment. That's just a strange we're just weird with that shit. We have the capacity to hold for multiplicity and multidimensionality. So that's the fuckery I'm unpacking today. I hope that this was helpful and nourishing. And I hope that moving forward, you are able to find a way and be compassionate with yourself wherever you're at, to allow yourself to inhabit the sufficiency and enoughness of being the beautiful divine light that you are. And I will talk to you next time. Hasta luego, mi gente. Bueno, mi gente, thank you for joining me on this wild and liberating journey of dismantling the fuckery. Remember, we are the architects of our own liberation. And if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your people. Do all the things. You know what it takes for us to keep these frequencies rolling. Together, we will transform the world from a place of fuckery into a realm of unapologetic fabulosity. Stay fierce, my loves. Stay fabulous and keep dismantling. And if you want me or need me, yes, you heard me say that right, you know where to find me at priestessingliberation.com. Nos vemos ahorita. Adiós.